Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon to all of you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
It's our
And-
pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Okay. Thank you. And wishing all the best to your series. It's a very well thought and timed series, you know.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
think, Ria, you can start.
Good afternoon to all present. I, Ria Barala, extend a warm welcome to our distinguished speaker, Professor Madhu, the IQAC coordinator, Professor Payal Nagpal, the G20 nodal officer, Professor Poonam Batra, the teacher in charge of the Department of Commerce, Dr. Vibha Jain, faculty coordinators from the Department of Commerce, teachers, and all the students joining us today for this online lecture session. We are privileged to have with us Professor Payal Nagpal, the IQAC coordinator of Janki Devi Memorial College. Dr. Nagpal is a professor in the Department of English, Janki Devi Memorial College, University of Delhi. Her areas of interest are literary theory, modern drama, and Indian English poetry. A theatre person and a literary critic, she has authored and edited many books. Her annotated editions of Shakespeare's Othello and Macbeth, as well as Isbin's Ghosts, Tennessee Williams, The Glass Menagerie, and more recently, Mahesh Dattani's Tara have been published by Worldview. Some of her publications are a book on Jean Genet titled Shifting Paradigms in Culture, a volume on drama studies co-authored with Anand Prakash titled Text and Performance, a Theoretical View. Along with Professor Shyamalai Narayan, she compiles the Indian section of the Journal of Commonwealth Literature. She has published her debut poetry collection in Labyrinth. She has recently contributed to the Routledge Encyclopedia of Indian Writing in English. I request Professor Nagpal to kindly share a few words with us.
Thank you, Ria. First and foremost, I want to, on behalf of Janki Devi Memorial College, and also on behalf of the principal, Professor Swati Pal, she's not well. She couldn't be here for this virtual session. I would extend a very, very warm welcome to Professor Madhu. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I really want to congratulate the Commerce Department for this wonderful series that they have put together, especially our G20 convener, Dr. Poonam Batra, TIC of the Commerce Department, Dr. Vibha Jain, the organizers. I know that Dr. Sanatan, Dr. Alka, Dr. Tejaswini, they have worked very hard to put this series together. I think it's extremely important also in the context of the entire concept of the G20, where the G20 is an entity comprising about 19 sovereign countries and the European Union. And when the G20 looks towards international financial stability, looks at sustainable development goals, I think when countries are classified in terms of developed and developing countries, I think the developing countries really stand to gain a lot. And I know I've read about Professor Wij, that with her expertise in finance, I think we can look forward to a very, very informative session that is going to really make us think about a lot of these things. I'm not a person from commerce, but we in literature, in humanities and social sciences also, for us to understand the geopolitical context, the concept of the G20, and especially with India's presidency in the G20. I mean, we've been a part of the G20 ever since its inception in 1999. So I think all disciplines today, when we talk about interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity, so this series, I think, is going to be a very important input for all of us. So thank you for agreeing to come for this lecture, Professor Wij. And once again, I welcome you to Janki Devi in the virtual manner. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your words. Ladies and gentlemen, It is indeed an honor to have the esteemed presence of our speaker, Professor Madhu Vij, today. Professor Vij is a former senior professor of finance with over 4 decades of experience at the Faculty of Management Studies, University of Delhi. Her professional and teaching interests encompass areas such as international finance, risk management, banking and financial services, corporate finance, and accounting. She currently serves as the Academic Council Chair and President at the Global Risk Management Institute in Gurugram. Professor Vij is also the government nominee to the Institute of Company Secretaries of India and holds the position of independent director in 4 private limited companies. Notably, she has served as a non-executive independent director of MOIL Limited, a mini Ratna PSU from 2010 to 13. Her contributions extend to her roles on the board of governors at NIFM, Lal Bahadur Shastri Institute of Management, and her membership in the academic advisory body of the Indian Institute of Management, Sirmaur, among others. Professor Vij's expertise is further demonstrated through her role as a panel member for the award of PM's Trophy for selecting the best steel plant for 2 years, 2011 to 13, and her participation in the ad hoc task force for Result Framework Document 2011 to 13. She is also a member of the editorial board of several prestigious journals and has an extensive record of publishing and presenting research papers in India and abroad. Her accomplishments include the successful completion of several projects sanctioned by national bodies like the UGC, RBI, ICSSR, SAIL, and Delhi University. Professor Vij is also the author of 4 books and has co-authored 2. Professor Vij's dedication extends to her role as the director of the Women's Studies and Development Center at the University of Delhi from June 2012 to July 2013. Her active involvement in gender-related issues has led to her delivering special talks and working on the project Microfinance and Gender. It is an immense honor and privilege to have you with us today, ma'am. With great respect and anticipation, we eagerly await Professor Vij to inaugurate her discourse. Therefore, I humbly request Professor Vij to kindly enlighten us.
Thank you so much, Ria. That was like simply, I mean, it's always good to hear, but you really made me feel, go back memory lane, as I would say.
Thank you.
Good afternoon and a very, very warm welcome to all the faculty members, other faculty, and the students who are present here. A warm welcome to Sanatan, who has been a very dear student at various points in time. And thank you, Sanatan, for helping me and for having me here. Then Vibha, or Dr. Vibha, or Professor Vibha, been interacting with her lots of times. So a pleasure to be seeing you here. Then your other members, yeah, Dr. Poonam, Alka, and a lot of, other members who are here. Janki Devi has always been very special because, the time I was associated with FMS, I had good friends who were working in Janki Devi College. Okay, so that has been the association with the college. Okay. Absolutely, as I started off by saying, G20 and its trade possibilities for India, you couldn't have thought of a better area for us to interact. See, the fact is, having recently concluded G20, we are all in the process of learning. And when you say trade possibilities, investment, it's throwing the door open. And important would be how we leverage the leaders we met and how we take this forward. So leveraging the opportunities under various heads would definitely help us grow in trade and investment relations. In fact, I was reading, IMF says 80% of global growth will come from global south. And we're going to dwell on this a little later. But as of now, the G20 under the presidency of our very respected Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, wherein he started with the theme which says it all: one earth, one family, one future. And that is where we think of the linkages. So the point remains that even if I'm a developed nation, I cannot grow on my own. I need to be supported by other nations. So it is this requirement for trade, growth, investment opportunities, which has brought the world icons together. And it's a matter of privilege, joy for all of us that we had, this entire interaction in India. About trade possibilities, I remember the interaction was in Jaipur, So the idea was a little more focus on the MSME sector, which we'll again talk about a little later. To set the context a little, the recent events, in fact, it is a defining event in the history of not only India, but I would say across the globe. Once again, I would say the summit was a huge success. And this is all the more, I would say, remarkable when we view it against the backdrop of multifaceted events which were being, faced before the summit. So what were these events? You could start from, I would say, the COVID, uncertainty in the economic scenario, climate change, Russia-Ukraine war, or the recent war which we are seeing between Israel and Hamas, or even the policies of unilateralism, protectionism, fragmentation, and above all, the uncertain geopolitical frictions. And just let me add another part to this, a few data points which always, help us in understanding the whole context a little more. And this was emphasized a lot during the discussions in the G20. They said the G20 nations make up of 85% of the global GDP, 75% of global trade, and 2/3 of the world population. If this is the kind of importance we are holding, then why not we, let me put it in very simple language, strengthen these ties forward and move ahead. Okay, how do we ensure that this summit to bring more, I would say, more predictability into the whole process of international trade and relations? The point here is that we are not talking about a group of countries which are similar. The group of countries we are talking about here is completely heterogeneous, but with a common goal. So what needs to be done, therefore, is, as I said, how to bring stability, how to bring predictability, and how to leverage. Not go into the details, and which was emphasized and which was focused, which remains as a backdrop. The focus on sustainability, the focus on climate change, and the focus on all-round well-being.
मैम आपका म्यूट हो गया.
I don't know why it's getting muted. Okay. So the important question to ask is, what do we think are some of the benefits we expect to get, or let me put it like this, which India expects to get from summits like this, let me put it in terms of, as a faculty would say, 1, 2, 3, 4, which makes it a little more clear for my students also. Energizing the international economy is definitely going to be one. Availability of greater resources, availability of greater linkages, expansion of tourism, global workplace opportunities, stronger security system, whether it is food or let me also say what our respected Prime Minister emphasized, the millets, So the millet production and consumption, and a deeper commitment to the biofuels. These, it was said, are going to be some of the prominent outcomes of the G20 summit. It's good to go into the intricate details, because once we go into the details, it's there where the solution is. Because we have talked a lot about the periphery, but the periphery is not really important. So that is why, when I was hearing to some of the interactions during the G20, I found they had gone into a lot of details and specifics. I think this is an important dimension we need to look at when we talk about any of the agenda of the G20 summit. It's important to recognize that the summit took place in this completely fluid context. It's not easy. A lot of us have still not got over the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, I do remember, when they were thinking, in fact, that is across the globe, India was credited with the vaccine production. And I do remember, this whole discussion of what will happen or what should be the charter once COVID is taken care of. Or let me put it another way. What are the learnings from COVID? It was said that after COVID, the solution will not be a straight line. It'll be a curvy path. And there was one more learning which was emphasized at a lot of levels, a little more in India. They said how leadership behaves during the crisis is something which we will never forget. So how organizations, how educational institutions came up to the rescue, came up to help, their stakeholders is something which will be remembered for a very long time. Now, it is this context when we think of ourselves as a part of a global village, that we need to be looking at solutions. Let me also take you back a little, right from World War I and II, if you have seen, once the World War II got over, most of the developing countries were devastated by war. And during the war, it was a protectionism policy. And that's what I started off by saying. Protect thy neighbor. So whoever sided with me was protected. Now, once the war got over, we signed the Bretton Woods. Now, the point is, if you look at the agreement, it is not the developing countries alone who wanted to come up after the war. It was the developed countries also who wanted to help the developing countries. It is then that we created two great institutions known as the IMF and the World Bank. And this whole agreement, I remember, involved 44 nations. And the biggest context was, how do we provide a stable exchange rate and reconstruct the world economy and help in international trade? So the similarity which I'm trying to, the similarity which I'm trying to draw is that growth in international trade, growth in investment is not something which is only important for a certain set of countries. And that is how the whole focus on this G20 in terms of details was, I would say, a lot more relevant. The other, related to, was the progress which was seen in G20, I would say, is the progress on digital public infrastructure, crypto regulation, climate financing, and reforms in the multilateral development banks. Right from the global financial crisis to the kind of the Silicon Valley Bank we have observed. See, the point is, whether it's a global financial crisis or a Silicon Valley Bank collapse or our own Punjab National Bank or a Kingfisher collapse, the effect does not remain within the domestic setup. And we are going to talk about this a little more in detail later. So once there is a complete linkage, then we also need to ensure how we take care of our banks. And let me also mention here, there is a Basel Committee on Banking, which talks about international best banking practices. The norms have only been strengthened further after 2010 crisis. And to put it again in the right perspective, RBI from day one has said that these norms are for European banks. But if they are best banking practices, we are going to adopt them. Simple. Now, how do you think it helps us? There are rules for banks in Europe, and we are adapting them. How does it help us? It helps us in international trade. It helps us in international growth. All our norms are as per international standard. So please remember, trade, growth, investment opportunities have to come hand in hand with these regulations which we are following. So the Basel Committee norm says 10% or 9% should be the capital adequacy ratio. RBI says, no, I will go a step further. I will make it 11.5. That is the kind of, confidence you give in the international banking scenario. 1990s, we had this whole process of globalization and liberalization. Prior to that, we could never visualize Indian companies raising funds abroad. Now, that's also a part of trade. So I still remember around 1996, 97, even the well-known companies, could be a Reliance, could be an SBI, could be an ICICI, when they raised funds abroad, people would not jump at their offer. They were all being offered at a discount. But so much so, so it takes time. And in 2003, 4, 5, if you have seen, all of them being offered at a discount, at a premium. So much so that, these ADRs and JDRs are helping Indian companies to raise funds. And it was being said that the rates abroad are much lower than the rates you are getting in India. Now, if this is so, we would want to be a part of international trade. And the recent regulation by the Companies Act 2013, see, that's why we could take this whole stand in the G20. And that's what our presidency, you have to have that confidence also that, okay, I'm taking the lead in G20. We are completely international rules compliant. So the Companies Act 2013, once you are following the norms, you can be listed on the London Stock Exchange or the New York Stock Exchange, which was not there prior to 2013. So companies rating EDR, GDRs, they had to prepare 2 balance sheets. And I'm sure as common students, we would know that. The point is, I'm, moving towards what our Prime Minister emphasizes, ease of doing business. So and I'll come to that a little later. But see, ease of doing business doesn't only happen by our giving you 1, 2, 3, 4 facilities. No, it has to come with compliancy also, with regulatory compliances. And that is what I think G20 has done. And G20, I would say, with India leading, it has helped to strengthen the trade ties. And, it's simple. Seeing is believing. So once you come to India, I mean, with so many of the leaders coming to India, they see that, okay, this is the kind of progress which India has had. Okay. So, particularly in sectors like infrastructure, we would like to attract investments. And that was a little more of our theme and aim. Okay. But it all remains that, when we are looking at all this, please, we will not be in a position to forget the geopolitical tensions. They are there and they would remain. So it could be the Russia-Ukraine war, or the Israel-US war, or there'll be something else. Now, the point is, it is our responsibility to rebuild, regain the confidence. And that is where I think the G20 summit, which, as I started off by saying, 2/3 of the world population, 85% of the world GDP. I think this would go a long, long way in helping us improve trade and investment relations. Let me also mention an important dimension which has come up. It is in this context, India's proposal to create a global value chain, which can withstand future shocks. Now, what is this global value chain? We read a lot about it in marketing also and finance also. It helps to strengthen the risk resilience. And how does it help to strengthen the risk resilience? Let me give you an example. Let's say it's a Starbucks or it's a smartphone, which is assembled in China. Do you think China is assembling or manufacturing all the parts? No. Do you think a Maruti or a Honda is manufacturing all the parts, 100 all, which they did? No. How do you do that? This is called global value chains, where we give it to the countries who are good at whatever they are good at. So if country A is good at manufacturing a part, they're manufacturing it. So something like a computer, somebody is manufacturing keyboards, somebody is manufacturing the screen. But that's how it happens. And it is not necessarily in India. So, you hear of made in Bangladesh, made in Indonesia. So you go abroad and when you like something, you say, oh my, it is made in India. Should I buy it? Yes, you should. Because it speaks of quality which your country is producing. Now, it is important to divide the products and do an outsourcing rather than we manufacture all the products ourselves. And this is also what I meant when I said leveraging the benefits, create more cost-efficient products. For example, smartphones, which are assembled in China, they might include designs from US. And, what I have read also is the silicon chips from Singapore. And similarly, from 6 or 7 other countries. Now, the point is this model of global value chains is a great success. And this was emphasized by our Prime Minister, who specifically said that this helps to reduce vulnerabilities, minimize risk, and enhance resilience. So I would say, we also need to look at this whole concept of global value chains and how we can strengthen it and take it further. Let me also talk a little about some of the, the positive steps India should take to enhance its trade from the G20 countries. They talk of typically steps like free trade agreements, ease of doing business. Okay? Now, how do you do ease of doing business? Generally accepted. It could be social media, it could be digital marketing, it could be email marketing, and a host of others, which we are all comfortable with. Still another could be development of modern infrastructure. I tell you, without infrastructure, we will always be at a disadvantage. Infrastructure is an absolute must. Okay. Then what is being emphasized by the present government is cultivating a skilled workforce. In all the colleges also, I know, you all do a lot of these value-added courses. All accreditations say, what are the value-added courses which your college has done? How have we improved the skill of our students? Now, you could, there are many ways of doing this, but simply, if I would say, it is by promoting a culture of continuous learning. That is one. And the second is what we have all started emphasizing, which our national education policy has also emphasized, industry academia interface. And let me also just add a little on the cultivating a skilled workforce. There are questions being asked. Why? How? It's not possible. But if you look at the national education policy, it has talked of multifunctional. They give a lot of focus to this. So they say, I could be doing management, but my interest is in music. I could be doing engineering, but my interest is in sports. So it's great. That is what cross-functional or multifunctional is. Now, that is looking at the student's perspective. How do I look at it from the industry perspective? If you look at industries, all of them say the problems facing industries are rarely unidirectional. So if the problems facing industry are not unidirectional, how can the solutions be unidirectional? So you have to have cross-functional. You have to have multifunctional. Now, that is an important learning, which we have to tell our students. So whether it's an AI or ML, whatever my interest is, I have to dwell a little deeper into that. And that would determine my success. Okay. So the traditional courses are great. Those are our bread and butter. So at FMS, our traditional course is the MBA. But yes, along with that, if you see, everyone, all the students would be doing whatever they are good at. So whatever my aim is, somebody will do a risk management, somebody will do a stock exchange, and so on and so forth. It's also important in today's context to develop teamworks, and that is also which was emphasized by G20. Higher teamworks lead to higher job satisfaction. There are no two opinions about it. I cannot sit in my room and work. Maybe I can do it for one day, I can do it for 2 days. No. Have to have teamwork. And that is the meaning of cross-functional. That is the meaning of multi-dimensional. That is where you learn from each other. And you see, in a lot of business schools, where the admission is a little by choice, when you do the interview, you ensure that you have students from across the sectors. So have you heard of, and I'm sure it's not very new now. So I remember many years back when we first had students who had done proper MBBS and they were practicing and they wanted to change. Like, why do you want to do that? But now you realize HUL just lapped them up. There'll be similarly be a pharma company will just lap them up. Why? Because you need management and you need these skills for research and development. So that is where, you realize that all these are very, very, very important for any institution or any individual to grow. I mean, I can ask you, none of you would be teaching what you studied. It's all old. I mean, at least in commerce, I'm sure no one can teach. Maybe in certain other disciplines. You have to constantly innovate, constantly change. I still remember there was a time when somebody would say, oh, I'm an expert in finance. You can't dare make that statement now. There's so many branches, sub-branches, super specializations that no, you cannot say, I am doing very good or I am an expert. So that is what I would say. For sustained and balanced growth, you need to cultivate a skilled workforce. And last, which is a definite problem for us, is how do you tap the population growth? You know, you go to any country, you know, we have a lot of divide, so I'm not getting into that. But I've many times been to Europe also. You know, I go by metros, I go by buses. There's absolutely no issue. You can just get into a metro, it's going to be completely okay. You get into a bus, it's completely okay. But in India, it's very difficult. I'm sure none of us will venture into that mode unless it's absolutely must. Now, with a lot of these apps also, it makes life easier for us. But the point is, I always say that this is an issue which we have to keep in account and be a little proactive about, sympathetic even towards the government. You know, every time you ask any student what should be done, oh, the government should solve it. How can the government solve every problem? No. So how do you control the population? Only one way, with education. You know, Kenya and a lot of countries have done that. So economic measures and education. It will take time, but it will be a smooth path. And that is what I was saying. So what are the measures taken by the Indian government? Ease of doing business, development of modern infrastructure, and cultivating the skilled workforce. They have all been well documented, you know, and all these measures are being taken up by the government at various stages, I would say. And the other is, you know, the positive, that, you know, when you talk of trade, you talk of investments, the point is, we are also exchanging culture. We are also exchanging ideas. Exchange of culture, exchange of ideas, exchange of technology has only helped people come closer. And once we think of this part, I think that's what will be an important way forward. You know, I remember 10 years, 15 years back, it was a great thing to get a job abroad. You know, so I've got a job with the multinationals who is wherever it's placed, US, Europe, wherever it is, it was a point to be discussed. No, now, you know what students want? They want, okay, let the job be in India, but let me travel abroad. So, you know, a consulting job, which is. So the point is, India has tremendous opportunities. How we tap them is ultimately, you know, left to each one of us. Now, if you talk of multinationals, let's say NHUL or a PNG, you know, they have trade across boundaries. And I would say the 1990s liberalization and globalization was an important step in this direction. Now, most of us, we can't visualize not having to maybe shop at a Zara or an HMN or any of these brands. What is this? This is about global trade. But let me also add here, you know, in all these multinational brands, it helps us to bring the culture. It helps us to bring the culture. But at the same time, you know, all these multinationals or transnational corporations realize that India is a great, great market to be captured. And that's where your strength is. And that's where you would have seen it was all also focused in the G20. So countries cannot afford to annoy India, keeping in view the kind of vast potential and possibilities you have. Yes, we have a limitation, there's no doubt about it. But so for that matter, each country would have their own limitations. You know, what could be some examples of global, I would say, global cultural organizations? You know, you talk of a McDonald's, you talk of Pizza Hut, or you talk of any of these multinationals which I have just mentioned, they are very, very relevant. This helps me to bring out another point which was emphasized in the G20 summit. Globalization is good. It helps us to improve our standard of living. It helps to increase income levels. All that is fine. But it also helps to lift people out of poverty. So if we want to raise the standards of living, I mean, a lot of these multinationals could be having their factories, outlets, whatever it is in India. So, it is a fact that trade and globalization has lifted hundreds and millions of people out of extreme poverty, I would say. So whether it's Mexico, it's India, Poland, you can go across a lot of countries. This could happen to FIIs, it could happen to foreign direct investment, and this is something which really helps, So when we talk of promoting trade, it's not only with one incentive. Okay. A little on what is the relationship between globalization and extreme poverty. Okay. When countries open up trade, they tend to grow faster. The living standards tend to grow faster. And this is what researchers have also found. That, so the usual argument is that this tends to trickle down to the poorest of poor. And one simple way in which it trickles down is in higher employment. Okay. Then shifting gears a little, we are the 5th largest economy. We want to become the 3rd largest. In fact, day before only I was reading an international seminar topic. It was, how can India become the 3rd largest? Very good. See, unless you think big, you're not going to achieve it. So how do we move from the 5th to the 3rd position? Here, I would say the increased digitization, increased competitiveness of our products, and increased transparency are some of the important initiatives. India has expanded digitization, promoted innovation. Now, corporate governance, which was not there. The Enron fiasco, we have corporate governance. Then there's another issue, we have ethics. So we are telling our students all about ethics, leadership, corporate governance. All these are important issues for any country like India. In fact, I was reading. In fact, let me also say, digitization in India is a lot better than other countries. We may be lagging behind in some countries, but if I were to name a few of European countries, definitely better than them. There was this phrase I was reading in the in the G20. It said, in fact, the Prime Minister used it. We have moved away from red carpet to we have moved away from red tape to red carpet and liberalized FDI flows. And here it is in this context. Let us mention the initiatives, whether it's Make in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, they've all given a boost to the manufacturing. They've also brought in a lot of political stability. Okay. And this is how, we plan to jump numbers. Now, a little about, when we say move from red tape to red carpet, I remember, our respected finance minister had come to SRCC, for their annual day function. And she mentioned that from a twin balance sheet problem, we are in a twin balance sheet advantage. And you know, what is this twin balance sheet? In fact, let me add, it is this twin balance sheet problem which Moody's and Standard & Poor had emphasized for bringing our rating down. You know, they gave us a rate, they were again giving us a rating of Baa3, which is just one level above junk. But when Arun Jaitley was the finance minister, then again they had given us Baa3, and there was a lot of discussions in the North Block corridor, and they moved it up to Baa2. And then obviously the government is going to ask them, why are you giving us a lower ranking? They said it is because your banks are not financially sound. And see how the government has taken care of that. You have seen the kind of mergers and acquisitions which have happened in the banking sector. And then this whole move, which is a lot of criticism also, of creating a bad bank. What is a bad bank is not a solution, I completely admit, for tackling the NPA problems, but it will help remove the NPAs from the bank's balance sheet, transfer it to another bank. So if I'm a bank, then I'm not good at chasing loans. I'm good at my banking business. So let's give this chasing of NPA to another bank whose only job is to chase these NPAs, and then become a lot more careful in future. That is why we have all these, you know, the Basel Committee norms, which has emphasized leverage and liquidity for the banking sector. And that was given a lot of focus. And that is what makes our banking structure sound. Please remember, once the banking structure of a company, of any nation is sound, and the other is political stability, I think two things to help your country grow. In fact, I remember when I used to teach international financial management to my students, and you know, when we would do this chapter on country risk, I would say, okay, tell me, if I were to rank a country, and we talk of economic, financial, and social factors, which factor would you give more importance to? Everybody would say economic factors. But if you see the World Bank, it has given 50% importance to political factors. If you look at India's ranking, the time there is a political uncertainty, the ranking will go down. For example, Greece, it may have the best of resources, but when it was going through political turmoil, would any of us go to that country? No. The shifting of the nano plant, good example of political uncertainty. Point what we are just trying to help you understand is the political continuity is a great important factor for any country. See, if I am good in labor, if I am good in natural resources, I will be good at it. Nobody can take that away from me. But if there is political uncertainty, in fact, to just help you understand this, I remember, you know, we used to do a lot of this ranking with our students. And the time we had the threat of a war, you know, or the Kargil war also, you know, our ranking had immediately gone down. It immediately gone down because people don't perceive you to be a stable country. In fact, the quote by IMF's chairman at that point of time is 50% of the exercise of every country is political risk. The rest can be taken care. Now we have a host of other factors like corporate governance, environmental, ESG, and I'm sure you know, no project gets through without ESG compliance or a circular economy. There's a lot more to this. But the fact remains, you know, about the importance of this entire setup. And in the case of India, we have shifted to an online single indirect tax, the GST. That has made life simpler. It's made much life simpler. In fact, I know a lot of young students and young executives, they all file their tax on their own. You know, so if you're not getting income from other sources, if you're getting income from one source, I think it's absolutely simplified to to prepare your own income tax return. Okay. Then there is an open network for digital commerce. Then there's a unified payment interface. There are a lot many, which has made, you know, so this whole focus on financial inclusion, going deeper into India's area, I think that's how. So, you know, Remember in Women Empowerment, I remember at Women's Studies Development Center, when we would give a little discussion, when we would have a little discussion on women empowerment, our opening line would be, how can any nation grow if they leave 50% of the population behind? We are 50%. So how can you grow if you leave 50% of us behind? The same is true in the case of India now. Okay, so I think that's another important. And before I close, there is one more aspect which I would like to focus, which was focused in the Jaipur meet in the in the G20, and that is about MSME integration into global trade. Because in the case of India, we are all the time emphasizing our medium and small scale industry. You know what? And I was reading this. It said for us, MSME means maximum support to medium and small enterprises. That's how they have defined MSME. It's a new way of looking at it. The idea is, when I remember, I started off by saying India has advocated the concerns of Global South at the 12th WTO Ministerial Conference. It is in this context, safeguarding the interest of millions of farmers, and the small business becomes an important issue for India. So whatever there is there in the small scale sector, and even if you go by employment figures, they account for 60% or 65% of employment. And this is something you cannot overcome. So we need to look at sectors, which are giving us support. And I remember RBI's initiative during COVID. They said, no, please give them extended time for repayment of loans. Those are very difficult years. So, so the idea is they need continued support from the government. And that is what our aim should be. Okay. So what is that which we want MSME sector to do? It says the ethos of the MSME sector should be, so we are not helping them like this. The government says they should be zero defect and zero effect. Those were the two terms. So to adopt the ethos of zero defect and zero effect on the environment. Okay. So the Jaipur conference, was an initiative to ensure there was seamless flow of information to MSMEs to address the challenges and how to help them access the market and other business related issues. So, when we are talking of increasing our international trade, increasing our investment, we are not going to leave the marginalized sector behind. No, we are going to help the MSMEs also to participate in international trade. Okay, so it is a collective responsibility as one family, as is being said, to restore the confidence in international trades and investment process. Let me stop here and thank you so much. You all have been wonderful. I could see all of you with your video open, and I'm sure as faculty, we know the kind of strength, I would say, you always derive from your audience. So wish you all the success in the deliberations, in your interactions. And once again, thank you so much for having me here. It was completely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, ma'am, for a very wonderful session. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome our principal, Professor Swati Pal. I mean, despite the fact that she's not well, but, she is one workaholic.
Sure.
So, I mean, despite the doctor saying, don't speak, don't do any work, but, we are really happy that she has graced us with her presence. And if she's up to it, I would love for her to say a few words to us. Before that, a brief introduction of Professor Pal Ria?
Yes, ma'am. I welcome the principal of Janki Devi Memorial College, Professor Swati Pal. Professor Pal is a Charles Wallace and John McCreth Theatre Studies awardee and has received a Lifetime Achievement Award for a contribution to educational planning and administration from WAGE. She is also an awardee of the 34th Dr. S. Radhakrishnan Memorial National Teaching Award 2018. She has lectured and published widely on subjects ranging from pop theatre, creative writing, academic writing, to modern European and British drama, as well as gender. She is the Vice President of the Indian Association of Commonwealth Languages and Literature. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, please pardon me. I've got a bit of a frog in my throat right now because I think I've got a touch of viral, so I've not been doing too well. But yes, I must say that I'm delighted. I did join in earlier, Manjuji, and I was listening to you carefully, but I think the viral has really caught me bad. So I switched off again, and then I've rejoined now. And I want to begin by congratulating the Department of Commerce for organizing this series of absolutely relevant and pertinent talks. Manjuji, when I was listening to you and I was listening to the whole notion of how trade is going to be facilitated by the G20, the one thing that struck me was that any such platform whereby world leaders come together, of course, for us to talk about it, I beg your pardon, Madhuji, for us to talk about it is, and to be sensitized about it is one thing. But the more important, the more relevant thing is, what do we take back from it? So I think for all of us in the college, we need to look at how the world really serves as these kind of deliberations serve as a telling to us. For example, Madhuji, you were speaking about how this will improve tourism, how we need to look at things like infrastructure, how we need to work upon the internal aspects of the country in order to build up and to facilitate trade. And as an administrator, I think one of the things that has been brought home to me is that if I want the best possible output from my college, I have to provide the right kind of atmosphere. I have to facilitate channels of communication amongst people within the college, between the college and the university, and again, for the students who go abroad, between them and the colleges and universities they apply to. So in a certain sense, what I'm trying to say is that the G20 for me has a certain symbolic value. I think it is these deliberations that lead us to administer better, that lead us to a better understanding of our surroundings, our environment, and in a certain way indicate to us the paths that we must take. On an aside, very often we complain about the fact that there is a hierarchy amongst colleges, amongst higher education institutions, and so sometimes students don't want to join your college. So one of the things that becomes important is, okay, so what do we do to make the college really attractive so that students join it? What do we do to increase our TRPs, if I'm able to put it like that? So we work towards that. We work towards creating a certain better perception of the college. And that comes through actual hard work, that comes through actually setting our house in order, setting the college in order, both academically, infrastructurally, in terms of research, in terms of facilities, all of it is required. So whatever we are seeing on the world stage is really relevant to us at every level. So for those students who may be wondering कि अभी तो हम छोटे हैं, हम यहाँ पे क्या कर रहे हैं, what are we learning here? Or even for teachers who are probably wondering, but I'm not handling the government, and so why do I need to know all of these things? We need to all know all of these things because, as I said, they serve as a lesson to us about how within because we're talking not about a global society as much as we are talking about a local society. That's my understanding, of course. So if you're talking about a global society, whatever impacts the global has to begin from the local, and whatever is happening at the global level must impact the local level. So it's a symbiotic mutual relationship. So I was thinking about all of this as you were speaking, Madhuji. And despite being ill, if you could make me think so much, I'm sure the others who are keeping well and listening to you have learned so much from you. I'm sorry I got your name wrong initially, Madhuji. But thank you so much for your time and for your very, very interesting and valuable insights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Swati. I'll just say one thing, that I'm sure you are a great administrator, and the kind of summarized version you have said, I think it's a good takeaway. But to honestly say, the happy faces of your faculty and teachers say it all. Say it all. So
thank you. You'll be happy to know that very recently there is this the ISO agency COAE, COE, which gave us amongst I don't know how many institutions across the world, we have been one of the colleges to get the Joyful Institution Award.
wow.
So, so I'm glad that you could see that.
It's reflected on the smiles and the cheerful faces of your faculty.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madhuji. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure, and hope to meet you in person in college.
Absolutely, absolutely, anytime. And
Lovely.
wishing you all the best. Please get well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And best wishes, Commerce Department. Best wishes to all the participants. This is really wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And get well soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, can we log off now?
I would like to request Dr. Vibha Jain, the teacher in charge of the Department of Commerce, to propose a vote of thanks to our esteemed speaker.
You are muted, Dr. Vibha.
Vibha, please unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine. Sorry. Because Professor Paul has already summarized everything, and you have given us so many points that that is the input we have acquired for brainstorming. So good afternoon to our honorable speaker, Dr. Madhu, Professor Swati Pal, Professor Payal Nagpal, Professor Poonam Butra, and all my dear colleagues and all my dear students. I extend really a hearty vote of thanks to our renowned and learned speaker, Professor Madhu, who spared time from her busiest schedule. I know how busy she is.
Oh, no.
That busiest schedule to enlighten us with the theme of one earth, one family, and one future. You have discussed the important issues, which really are food security, climate, just to name few: food security, climate and energy, development, health, digitalization, and all the other things. You have the main point. One point I really liked is that how leadership behaved during the crisis. That is really a taking point that I have to take it back. And afterwards, also, you have touched upon so many points, but Dr. Professor Swati Pal has already touched upon. I'll not again revise them. But yes, I'm really thankful to my principal, Professor Swati Pal, who has joined in spite of her not good health. She has joined to support us, and she is always there to support us in all our endeavors. She is the pillar and support for all of us. I also thank that. Also thank to Professor Nagpal, then our nodal officer Poonam Butra, and if I won't thank to my Dearest student and my coordinating team, Mr. Sanatan, Mr. M.S. Alka, and Dr. Tejaswini, then it is my fault. After that, I also want to thank my coordinating student team. Without their support, without the technical support, we will not be able to present all this thing. And I'm really thankful to everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank